My name's Kalia Yizar, Kaliahyzar. I'm a junior at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College.
My name is Sierra Noel, Ceirranoel, and I'm a junior here at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College.
My name is Janelle Nanga, Jenellennangah, and I am a paraprofessional at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College and a co-host of the No Justice, No Peace podcast.
Okay, and ladies, you have witnessed, you started a podcast a couple of years ago after the George Floyd murder. Tell us about what prompted you to start that podcast.
Honestly, it had really all started on a trip that we took to Washington, D.C. We had a really big learning moment out there, and it was a lot of emotions that we had all felt and a lot of community and togetherness. We broke down a lot of walls, a lot of boundaries that, seemed more taboo within our community, and we wanted to bring that back to Colorado. So we started our BSA, and when the protests around George Floyd had happened, we decided that we wanted to speak out about it. A lot of our BSA wanted to go to the protests, but our principal had decided that probably wouldn't be the best idea, so we ended up just creating the No Justice, No Peace podcast.
Okay, and that podcast focused on what exactly? Did it focus on social justice, nonviolence, all of the above?
I would definitely say all of the above. I mean, when we first started the podcast in our first series, we really wanted to have an emphasis on a lot of the Black history that we were missing as students, which is one of the reasons that we started the BSA and a lot of our efforts at our school is because we realized that we were missing a lot of our Black history as students. So I would say within our first series, it was really revolving around a lot of the connections between Black history and a lot of things that we still struggle with as Black people today. And it ranges from really social justice issues, generational trauma, Black history, really all across the board, everything that has to do with Black.
Okay, and when you saw the violence break out after the George Floyd murder, what was your thought process?
I can say that my thought process was I was extremely angry and really disappointed that the same injustices that's been happening decades ago is still continuing to happen to this day. So I felt like I need to be a part of the change to make sure that this is not what happens in the next 10 years or the next 20 years or the next 100 years even, because at the rate that we were going, it felt like that this will never end.
And with that being said, what do you think of a non-violent social protest curriculum to be taught at middle, high school, or in school altogether? What do you ladies think of that?
I definitely think that that's something that is mandatory, should be mandatory, and should have been. I definitely think that a lot of students are missing that within their lives, and it's really taken out of education because we need to be able to break down barriers. We need to be able to have cultural relevance within our classrooms and within our relationships, and not including not only history, but how to actually be together as a community and really working by the virtues of the civil rights movement. Like, how are we supposed to do that if we don't know what was going on, if we do not know the curriculum, and if we do not know the history behind what was going on in the protests and, the steps to be nonviolent?
So having the principles of nonviolence taught of Dr. King's social movement, you said is mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's ask this. The podcast that you started, No Justice, No Peace, how has that impacted the community?
I would say that it's impacted the community by being a nonviolent way to advocate for ourselves and to advocate for not only the Black people that we identify as, but as the people of color in our community and in the nation. So So being able to talk about how we're angry and how we're upset, and being able to educate others around the injustices and the inequalities within education has been a way where we could do it in a nonviolent way. So I know that Janelle was saying that before we wanted to, or the original members of the BSA wanted to talk in the protest and be able to advocate in that way, but that was more of a violent way. So they went ahead and resulted to a podcast.
And the podcast, it does it advocate for nonviolence?
Definitely, because on the podcast, it's the fact that it's like a youth voice being highlighted, and our voices more than anything, because I feel like a lot of youth, and especially youth of color, feel like they're robbed of their voice, they're robbed of their opinion, and that's not just by school systems, like that's just in society all over. So it's really important for when students that are usually silenced come into schools, they are able to have their voices amplified, and teaching a nonviolent curriculum is definitely something that will be able to do that, because it makes them feel powerful, it makes them feel like they're able to make change. And I know that's definitely what sparked a lot of the fire for the podcast girls.
And when you ladies took the trip to Washington, D.C. and the National Museum of African American History and Culture, you actually came back and had the Denver School Board adopt what exactly?
Our No Justice, No Peace resolution after, I believe it was passed exactly a year after we went on our trip to Washington, D.C. It calls for the inclusion of Black, Indigenous, and Latino literacy representation generally all across Denver public schools, within the classroom, within the stuff that children are learning, including feedback loops, making sure that the district is constantly getting new information and constantly accommodating for our students of color, so it's not just another 10, 15, 20 years of not listening to what our students have to say about their own education.
Is there anything else you ladies would like to add about the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. nonviolent social justice curriculum and its importance, as well as the resolutions that you've had passed through DPS? Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add that I feel like it's extremely important, like as Chanel said, that today a lot of youth feel as though that their voice is robbed, and I feel like especially as youth, a lot of people have actually undermined our efforts because you guys are young and you don't know everything yet and you're still emotional and stuff, but I feel like, to be honest, it's good to utilize that strive and that passion when you're young for what you believe in, rather than wait until you're older and until you lose some of that fire and that passion. So I feel like giving students not only the information they need to go out and make change and advocate for what they believe in, but really give them a space and a voice to speak out and make change without necessarily being involved or put in harm's way. So I feel like this curriculum is extremely important for today's youth like us who want to make a change, and for the people who want to support them.
And I would also like to add that I feel like being able to teach this curriculum and have students actually learn it will definitely bring the community together, because I know that one thing that separates a lot of students and a lot of different races is the fact that we miss that we're all going through common struggle. Like right now with COVID, there are certain people who are better off right now than others, but there are a lot of people that are all going through a common struggle, and there's a lot of beauty in struggle because it gives you, you know, the perseverance and the power to strive through, and then you reach like your goal, and then you feel triumphed and you feel empowered to not only empower yourself but empower the people after you and the generations after. So being able to get a curriculum in like this right now is imperative because it's something that we've been missing.
Yeah, and I know that the students all over who get to experience the curriculum is going to higher their self-esteem extremely. I know that learning about yourself makes you more confident in what you are and who you are. Learning about the resilience that you have in your history, learning about the passion, the power that you hold, just as being who you are is going to empower so many youth, and I'm so excited to see that.